let's get started. This is the agenda tonight, everybody. I'm going to get Victoria to do an acknowledgement of country. Then what we're going to do is give each of our views of the federal budget. And then we're going to go straight into questions that we've got prepared, and then we can probably go over to the main questions. But yeah, if you're here for hardcore technical financial advice, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, you really should have joined
and this is so not official. There's not even feedback because it sucks and we know it. So that's all right. We're not even asking you how it was. This is something we pulled together less than 24 hours ago. We're just hanging out. So
you text me and you were like, we should do a webinar on the budget, lol. And I was like, okay.
So if you're after structure, you're in the wrong place.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Victoria, could you please do an acknowledgement?
Of course I can. Just before we begin this evening, we would really like to acknowledge and pay respect to Australians, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, the traditional custodians of the lands, waterways and skies all across Australia. We thank you for sharing and for caring on the land which we are able to learn. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and we share our friendship and our kindness.
Well, thank you. So,
Glenn, you can just jump straight into sharing your views. I feel like I kind of know your views though already because I did listen to your YouTube video today.
Really? Okay. So I guess my views are that it was the worst kept secreted budget ever. It was let's build the country. Let's get as many people into jobs as possible. And the only way we can do that in a mass scale is to pump money into big infrastructure projects and pump money in terms of tax credits and some handouts into small business and business. My view about some of the business stuff that we'll get into later, it is probably not relevant to a lot of businesses because if you don't have the cash to buy equipment to write off, well, what does it matter anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Most small businesses just don't have cash at the moment anyway.
Totally.
Thanks for that.
I know. My other view is we heard squat on childcare. So it's cute that you want to send, 1 million Aussies to work, but how are we looking after kids?
100%.
Another thing, I think we were let down from some tokenism about the environment, which we'll touch on tonight. The whole women gender gap money, again, a bit of tokenism with the money put in that area. I was really upset that we didn't see anything, and I don't even think the word bushfire merely
didn't even come up.
So that was disappointing. But to round off my view, we need to know that it's hugely political, and we just the government are assuming that within 12 months, the recession's over. Within 12 months, we're traveling again. And within 12 months, there's a vaccine. So that was kind of their assumptions. And
those are big assumptions to be throwing around.
They are. And it's better to spend too much money than be left not spending enough when it's too late. So that's kind of my view of the federal budget. Victoria.
I felt that's pretty spot on. I think before we jump into it too, I know there's a couple of people from my community that said they were joining this webinar. So hello friends. Hi Henry. And they were like, Victoria, what the hell even is a budget? I'll tune in. And I think to just define that really quickly before we jump into it, a budget at its most basic level is the government's chance to kind of set out its policy priorities each and every single year. So parties make promises at elections and the budget set out exactly how they're planning on spending the money to make those things happen, plus other things not even imagined during the election campaign, and the ways that they're going to raise money to pay for all of that. And it's interesting because, yeah, as Glenn was saying, it's very political and a lot of this kind of plays into it. So a lot of the time they'll do people pleasing things, and often with the budget we do sometimes see them kind of backtracking on things they've said, or taking on feedback and going, oh yeah, you're right, that was completely missed, as kind of a people pleaser move, you could say. I didn't love the budget. I did get really excited seeing that they started talking about women, and I loved that they, you know, they really pointed out that women were arguably more impacted during COVID than men. And so I kind of was like, oh, like what's coming? That's fantastic. But then to see absolutely no childcare support, and the fact that we know in the background that childcare support, it's going to be more expensive in the future. Like, to have that not there kind of defeats the purpose for our working mums and, you know, people wanting to start families. And I think that if they wanted to contribute to like population growth, there would have been more support there, and there would have been more in line there, just purely because, like, you know, our population, what is our population growth? It's like 1.9 babies per woman in Australia at the moment. And I just think it's, you know, we need more support if they want to see that really increasing, because otherwise immigration is going to remain really, really important. Not that it's not, but I just think that, you know, there could have been more done. As you said, bit of a naff. Sorry, I've got a kitten in here that I'm going to kick out any second. But bit of a naff budget, in fact, like in the aspect that we kind of knew what was coming, but at the same time, a bit disappointing. Like, I just feel like, given there's so much, like, everything's so tumultuous at this point in time, they should have really focused on the JobKeeper and job seeker stuff a little bit more, instead of talking about how businesses are going to support people coming into the workforce. And it's like, well, what's $200 a week at the end of the day going to do to support a business taking on a new employee? So I just feel like there could have been more support, you know, for the average mum and dad going, well, you know, my partner's out of work, can you please explain?
Victoria, just following like with some general thoughts, I thought it was also hugely disappointing that we're throwing around like $16 billion for infrastructure, but we've got industry that have been so affected by COVID, like all the tourism businesses, all the airline stuff. There's so many people legitimately out of work. Could we not have done a universal basic income, which is just give everyone X amount in those affected industries until this shatstorm's over? So lots to talk about.
Yeah, and I just feel like they just didn't touch on it nearly enough. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't not included, but I just feel like they're not really understanding the impact of what we as a community as a whole are going through. And it didn't make a lot of sense. And I think that a lot of people, especially down here in Melbourne, where we're physically unable to go to work still, to then feel a little bit, you know, anxious about, well, what's going to happen? Like, am I going to be able to have this? Like, what happens if coronavirus comes back? And, you know, like, we are, you know, as Melburnians, staring at the numbers every day, being like, are they under the number? Like, are we going to make this? Are we going to get out of this? And, you know, more recently, we've seen the numbers go up, and there's been this outbreak in Chadstone, and like, we just feel like it's a never ending kind of thing. The fact that they, you know, announced it, but didn't really give those people at home watching, because we had nothing better to do, you know, the peace of mind that it's going to be okay, we're going to support you as a country, but don't worry, we're going to invest billions into infrastructure that arguably we don't need.
Yeah.
Like, at this point.
Now, I will, I was actually about to add one thing when you talked about how the budget works and the government. Christy actually asked in the live chat, how much do you think will be changed through the Senate? So it's important to note that everything that was proposed means nothing until it receives royal assent, which is basically the Senate approve it, and then the Queen will stamp it.
Queenie stamp it. I don't know if Queenie still stamps things.
She doesn't stamp it, but it's kind of a saying that that it's in law. But all we know so far is the Shadow Treasurer has come out and said we support all the personal tax cuts, which we'll talk about tonight. But Victoria, do you want to maybe read the first two questions we've got there from Rebecca and Emily, and we can chat about that?
So first we've got one from Rebecca, and that one is, how much is being invested to fight climate change? And then Emily said, was there any mention of climate change? Do you want to kick this off, or do you want me to kick this off?
You kick this off.
Oh, I was a bit annoyed about this. I just felt like they were investing so much in infrastructure and changing, and, you know, there was, in my opinion, basically nothing for like clean finance, corporation energy. Like, it makes no sense. Like, I get that, you know, it's really important for us, but like, really important is usually reflected in the budget, and it just wasn't. Like, don't get me wrong, like there was a lot around, you know, the renewable energy sector getting some more funding for another 10 years, I think it was, Glenn.
Yeah, another 220,000 for 10 years through, and I've made the note here, Australian Renewable Energy Agency. So again, that's not a huge deal. I thought it was interesting that the Australian government will be banning rubbish exporting.
Yeah, I did like that, but I also wondered how that will impact us as a country. Like, do we have, like, is that part of the infrastructure? If so, could we not have explained that? Because if that's part of the infrastructure, then arguably that's going to increase jobs in Australia that are, you know, essential jobs. So that's a great thing. But is that what you meant by infrastructure?
Yeah, how wild. It's just like, so infrastructure, they, you know, I think they said roads, rail and pipes, like freaking build some solar panels. Like,
makes sense.
Yeah, I thought it was important to note that they are going to look at putting, I think, about $70 million towards, you know, keeping the oceans clean and whatnot. But again, when you look at pure percentages of the, you know, $1 trillion worth of debt to fund all this crap, it's so minute, the amount of money that gets allocated to what's actually important. And
agreed. And knowing how much debt we're already going to be in since we're going through a global pandemic, like how much does that actually as a country put us backwards? Like, is this actually a good thing? Like, please don't get me wrong. Like, I want the climate change stuff to happen. I really want, you know, we were talking about it earlier, and, you know, that you said 70, I think it was 67 million on oceans and marine ecosystems, but then that includes 14.8 million to tackle marine impacts of ghost nets and plastic litter, and all of that stuff makes sense. But it's more for me along the lines of, well, like, we're already in heaps and heaps of debt, but we're not funding the right things. Like, those are the right things. Childcare would be the right things. Why are we funding infrastructure?
And I think it's important to note for those listening, and I'm going to put up a poll in a moment. You've got to, when they're doing these budgets, you've got to think in a year's time, the government, and it's any government, this is not a Liberal or Labor thing, they want to stand up with their little board and say, we invested here, look at the jobs increase. So it's literally, so in a couple of years' time or whatever, they can put a nice chart up to say, we threw money at this problem. And the fact of the matter is they reckon they can get more bang for their buck with jobs, building roads, than making forests better or doing stuff for climate change. And I think, Victoria, you probably agree that the government at the moment, they're just thinking, coal bad. Yes, everyone, we agree. Coal bad, gas good, but it's still fossil fuel. So yeah,
like, it's like, what's the lesser evil? Like, and that's what they're going for instead of trying to find clean energy. Like,
so I guess the short answer on the
panels, honestly, maybe we're just hippies though. Who knows?
The short answer on the climate thing was not much. So, and I'm not a climate guy, and it's probably on the scope of my knowledge. So let's put a poll up. And everyone, you can get familiar with the polling software. The question is, what's your care factor about the budget? So there's a lot of people who joined us tonight. Some people thought it was a talk about just general budgets and spending, which I'm sure, at the end. No,
we can totally have that conversation, though. It's literally one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. So I'm going to give it 10 more seconds. If you can find the polling section, you can put your poll there, and then I'll share the poll.
It's kind of rude. I can't vote. It says host can't vote.
Ooh, well, that's good. We don't want you to tip the scales. So well, if you are watching on YouTube, and we will, if you've got to duck away early or whatever, we'll pop a replay up tomorrow and get that link to you. The options for what's your care factor about the budget, don't heaps care, I'm concerned and want to be aware, or you're just here for the cat and the hangs. So I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So that's amazing. 75% of you legitimately are concerned and want to be informed. And I think that's a testimony to Victoria, your community and my community, and we share members. And just on that, if you're from my community, Victoria, can you just tell people who you are and what you do?
I am Victoria, and I run a community that is arguably better than Glen's, called She's on the Money. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. And yeah, we have a podcast and, a community, and have branched out into online courses and just pretty much everything Glen does. But
better, more considered.
Like with my, I
Flavor.
guess, to it. And you know what, like Glen and I are absolutely on the same page about most things, which is awesome, but we bring content to the table in very different ways. And I think that it's a really nice thing to have this community of just people that, bounce off each other as well. Like, I love Glen's community. I'm in your community, Glen. Like, I sometimes respond to your questions purely because I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm here for the bands. But yeah, I think it's a really nice space to be, because sometimes like someone can tell you something and it really doesn't resonate until you've heard it 3 or 4 times from different voices. And I think it just becomes, a stronger voice when we're all doing it together.
Yeah. And if you don't know who I am, my name's Glen, and I use a hammer to solve problems where Victoria might use a feather.
Okay, that's probably a pretty accurate description.
Yes, and my, I guess, podcast for our people is called My Millennial Money. There's a question here from Matt. Did anything get done with mental health, particularly for Victorians?
I don't believe so.
Well, basically all they did was, at the moment, you can get like 10 paid subsidized psychology sessions. They've just included that to 20. And I would really encourage anyone, if you are doing it tough, see your GP and ask for a mental health plan. And basically, there are some psychologists that you'll have to pay like a gap payment of $25 or $50 if they charge $100 for the session. But if they only charge, if they charge over $100 a session, but if they only charge the $100, you could get that not out of pocket. So that's kind of a big thing, I think, particularly if you are in isolation and you need to get out and do some talk therapy. That's one thing that they did on the mental health front that I think's of note, that you can get now 20.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And I just think that, say here, room service.
Hey mate, how are you?
Hola. I thought you guys were actually on the web, on the...
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Look at that. Delivery with a smile. Yeah, I think that that's really nice. And on that, we recently ran a self-care series, and I had a psychologist come in and just like talk about the importance of this stuff. And it's really, really important to care about your mental health. Like, if you can't care for your mental health, your financial health long-term is going to suffer. So I think it's incredibly important to put that first. And, the psychologist that I worked with, Brianna, who was incredible, honestly, our community went nuts for her. We'll probably see if we can get her back at some point. She, just said, if finances are a thing that you were concerned about when talking to your GP and going to, a mental health specialist, let your GP know so that they can give you a bulk billing mental health specialist, so they can give you more budget conscious options. And I think that that's really important, because they're going to send you to the best option on the table. They're not necessarily going to send you to the cheapest option on the table, which, they're qualified. They are absolutely a really great option, but they might just have a favorite or a usual that they send you to. So definitely just say, hey, is there one that bulk bills? Is there someone that's a bit more budget friendly? And they'll be like, yeah, cool. No, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
So definitely put your hand up and just ask.
Now, there's a question here. Let's get into tax. There's 3 questions. One from Christy. When will I see my tax cut? Carly asks, is the tax cut a lump sum or less tax each pay? And Jenna asks, can you explain the backdate payment for the tax cuts? Now, I've got a list here. Well, do you want to say anything about, do you want to answer some of those things, Victoria?
I mean, Christy's one on when do I expect to receive my 2160 They're saying by Christmas, but because nothing's signed off, we don't have, hard and fast dates just yet. We, have to wait around to see, if that gets through. And if that gets through, then we should see that stuff by Christmas, which is pretty good. I think that's a nice turnaround. Usually with budgets, it sometimes takes a little bit longer. Christmas is only 2 months away, guys. 11 more weekends.
Wow. Now, on that, so Christy says she's getting a 2160 tax cut. That basically means she earns, 60 to 80 grand a year. So, and the question from Jenna in terms of the backdating the payments, and Victoria, correct me if I'm not explaining this clear. Let's just do this. If it gets effective 6 months into the financial year from 1 July, we'll go 2160 divided by 2, which is half the year. You will, and if you divide that by 26, that's $40, $41 a week. So from December, when that comes in, your employer will change how much they withhold instantly, and you'll get the extra cash flow of that $40 a week or $20 a week in your pay. Then when you do your tax return, because for the first 6 months of the year, you would have paid too much tax, the other $1,000. So then you would get the return of the balance in your tax return.
So to simplify what Glenn said, you get half in your tax cuts immediately, and then half you get at tax time next year when you claim.
Love it. Now, yeah, so Christy actually just said on Q&A, basically said the same thing. So
okay, well, maybe Christy should be hosting this webinar.
Yeah, Christy, we should remember that.
Sub out hosts and be like, Victoria, you're out. Christy's better at this.
Remember we did our webinar, that first one that was a train wreck.
No, it wasn't. We were so wild. It was so fun. The feedback from that was great.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat. Julia Van der Laan. She asks, how will the budget affect first home buyers' ability to buy a first home? So we'll park that there. And then also Ashley asked things that affect first home buyers. And if you've got any other, actually, can everyone just raise their hand if that made sense on the explaining the tax credit? And I guess, Victoria, for the sole traders, probably won't see much until they do their tax return, and then their withholding will reduce.
Yeah.
I
think it's a good thing, obviously, that we're getting it, but it's better when you can fully understand when you're actually going to get that instead of it being a surprise.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah, that was a good thing you put up today, actually.
So that's just my Instagram, My Millennial Money. If you need to check that out, they're
reading the complex stuff. That was so simple.
Yeah, so that's basically what you would get. And let's remember, I might as well say, if you're earning $40,000 a year, there's a $1,000 tax cut. So again, if we cut the year in half, you get $500 at your tax return and cash flow the rest. And then up to 200 grand and more, the maximum you can save is $2,500. So Thank you everyone for raising your hand. Let's do one more poll, and then we're going to talk about the first home buyer stuff. So the question is, how much impact does the federal budget have on you personally? So just from what you've heard from other years, it's just good for us to know, so we can go back with our content. And then I'll give that 2 seconds. I'm going to turn my aircon on.
My heater's on, so we're clearly living in very different worlds.
I know, it's been really muggy and cloudy, and it gets hot in here with the lights and stuff. Isabel said, Glenn, you love using all the features. Well, I want to make these webinars not death by PowerPoint, but a conversation with everybody. Now, I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
You're asking for a middle ground.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. I was all or nothing then, wasn't I?
Yeah, you kind of were. I
know. And if anyone's got any suggestions for polls, just write it in the chat and I'll redo. I can do polls on the fly. So,
No impact.
yeah,
How
no impact.
interesting,
Half the
actually.
people said no impact.
Yeah, but that's so interesting given how, like, so many of you said you really cared, and like that, I don't know. I feel like my community and your community are just a bunch of caring people in general. So I really like seeing that a lot of you, half of you exactly, have no impact, but most of you really cared about the budget and the impacts on the economy and on our communities. And I think that's really cool.
I think it's a good talking point. And I'll do a poll about political preference, and we'll make it anonymous or whatever, just for fun, because someone asked about that. I think it's important to just everyone pause and acknowledge that, you know, whatever government's in, whatever budget is handed down, we control our destiny. Like, yes, we need to vote so a dictator doesn't get in, but day to day, we need to set up our financial lives. So if the government say you get $20 less or you get $20 back, that doesn't rock your world too much. And I acknowledge that there are people on government benefits and just starting, but as a direction to head, I believe, and I guess I'm not a socialist, so I won't be ticking socialist in the political thing, but I believe there is this element of personal responsibility that we need to kind of foster. Is that a fair comment, Victoria?
I think that's a pretty fair comment. And I just think that we need to be, you know, responsible for ourselves, because we don't know what's going to happen in the budget next year. We don't know what's going to happen years after this. In fact, we don't even know what's going to happen to our own health. So I think that, you know, it's important. We were talking about this before the webinar, Glenn. I think it's really important to care about the budget and, you know, rely, like if it's going to come in, cool, rely on it, plan for it. But like if you're going to get a tax cut and you're going to get extra money, like fantastic, you know, are you going to get $1,000 back? Fantastic. Put that into your savings, like make it work for you. Don't just kind of like, you know, get up in arms now and then by the time that Christmas comes, get it and then forget that it was there and it just comes into your spending account and it just flitters away. I think it's really important that if you know this is coming, let's plan for it. Let's put it into savings. Like if you don't have an emergency account and you're getting $1,000 back, that is an emergency fund for you right there as a starting point. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing to have. But then also you should be budgeting your own household. You should be budgeting, you know, for yourself. And if you haven't got if you don't have a cash flow plan, get one and start planning to, you know, what are my expenses coming up, so that, you know, we're worrying about the budget here on, you know, a country level, but like we also should really care about the budget we have in our own homes.
Yeah, totally agree. And I would say if you are trying to get ahead, and around that mental health part and anxiety, because I know I've been vocal on my podcast that I take Effexor for anxiety, depression. I know I need a certain amount of a cash buffer in my life to help me sleep at night. It's as simple as that. So whatever your situation is, if you want more cash to make you feel more comfortable, if you get extra cash and you've got debt, it's okay to be cash heavy. And then once you get a bit of a cash buffer in place, then attack your debt.
That's literally how I feel, Glenn. And I've been really open about my stuff. Like my community know that I see a psychologist and I adore her. I see her every 2 weeks and I'm on antidepressants as well. Like I take, what is it? Prestige.
Oh, yeah.
At the moment. Good drug. Yep. But at the end of the day, I think that, you know, that's something that gives me anxiety. Like I think it's really important that you and I actually talk about how money does make us as people anxious, because we're real people. And I think people tend to forget that because, you know, we're so passionate about talking about money. So people think maybe we are perfect, and we're not. Like I need an emergency fund. I've got clients who are like, I don't need that. I need $2,000. I'm like, wow, I need more than that, because otherwise I literally lay awake at night and stress about my personal finances. I stress about, you know, being able to pay invoices that come into my business, and I shouldn't be in that position. And, you know, like I've got a plan for that because I know I'll be mentally healthy if I've got that backup. So for me, really, really important. And that's why we talk about this stuff, because we know the importance of it because we experience it ourselves.
Totally. So Victoria, I've got for this poll that was suggested, and I'm going to tick anonymous, everybody. So
Yep.
There's no way we'll know. What's your political vibe? We've got Greens, Labor, Liberal, Independent. I don't vote. Do you reckon? Just put your hands up. Do you think that's an okay amount of options? I mean, they're the main ones, aren't they? Yeah, there's a million hands going up. Geez, I never thought we'd get political, but it's just interesting to know who's in the room.
Hey, Dan Andrews.
All right, so I've just launched the poll. Who's brave enough to give this a shake?
Also, if you don't vote, I want to know why. Like,
well,
why?
it could be
obviously you're not allowed to vote, or religiously you're not allowed. Like, that's fine. That, doesn't need an explanation.
Or I rock up, get my name marked off, and because I think it's all corrupt and blah blah blah, I just put my thing in and do the donkey vote.
Yeah, but like, we're so lucky to be able to vote.
So we'll end the poll. Yeah, not a citizen. That's fine.
Yeah, no, that's it. But there are people who are in a position where they can 100% vote and they choose not to. And I feel like we have so much power to shape our world.
I'm going to end the polling and I'm going to share the results.
Oh,
what do you think it will be, Victoria?
What have you done? I don't know. And I don't want to comment because I don't want to offend anybody.
No, that's all right. Okay, so I'm sharing the results for those listening or watching later. The highest portion is Labor at 34%, and then followed by Greens at 30%, then Liberal at 23%, Independent at 5%, and I don't vote or whatever else, whether you're protest vote, you can't vote or whatever, is 8%.
I love that. Loretta, I'm a Labor leading swinger.
I should have had swinger, baby. Yeah. So any other ideas for a poll, throw it in the chat. Now, Victoria, first home buyers, what was the big take?
I thought it was interesting. There wasn't heaps, in my opinion, handed down for first home buyers, but the extension of the first home loan deposit scheme was one of the few housing related things that they did speak about in the budget this year, and that was quite interesting. And if you're not familiar with it, the scheme enables first home buyers to be able to go into the market with the deposit as small as 5% without having any LMI, so lender's mortgage insurance, and the federal government kind of acts as guarantors on those loans. So how people talk about having guarantors and parents, like in this situation, it's not just 5%, like you're having it guarantored for the rest of the loan, which I think is really cool because not all of us have access to that. But the scheme will roll out, correct me if I'm wrong, it was another 10,000 places. So it's not, for me, it's a big scheme, but when you actually divide that among all of the states and territories in Australia, it's not actually that many people. And then to further that, there are only certain amounts of banks that actually secure that, and the preferences will be given to certain banks. So I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but if you want to go for the scheme and you approach a lender, they might go, okay, cool, but we only have 1,000 places and we've already filled them. So sorry about that.
And this 10,000 is only applicable for new dwellings. So I guess so it's applicable for new dwellings, which is interesting because they're in, I don't know, that's an increase in infrastructure instead of just buying what's already on the market. And arguably we already have a lot of free apartments and stuff like that in Melbourne. But in saying that, it's also, I don't know where I'm going. I think it's interesting. I honestly think I've got friends who live in Melbourne and they're buying an hour out. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think if you were, within an hour of a capital, because no one's buying in the middle of a capital city, like most of us can't afford it. But if you're within an hour ring of a capital city or whatever, it could be a really good opportune time. If you do have a decent income, 5% deposit, speak to a broker and just get the ball rolling.
As well,
because if you new dwelling, 5% deposit, pick up the 25 grand home builder, you might get some There's no stamp duty, and you might even get some local state-based grants as well. So,
I
lots
think
going
that's
on
really
there.
important to note as well. Like, unfortunately, like obviously, I'm not gonna, go for that because I live in the inner city, and like to build in the city, I'd be looking at buying land at $2 million plus however much it costs to build. So that's not great. But the other thing there is they increased the caps, which I thought was really good as well. So instead of, and I can't remember what they were, but like now in Victoria, the capital and regional city amount is 850,000 and the rest of the state is 550. So I think that is good because it was lower before, and I think a lot of people who wanted to make use of it, who had really good salaries, especially who were in that ring that you were talking about, Glenn, they're in positions where 850 is actually what they're needing to spend to get their dream home an hour from the city and build it. So it kind of makes it a little bit more accessible now, just in terms of what it was previously. Like, you couldn't have gotten something in the inner ring of like an hour out of Melbourne for less than, $700,000 or $800,000. So that kind of tapped a lot of people out.
Yeah. There's another poll going. Yeah, so first home buyers, and there was a question there about affecting. I don't think the budget will affect first home buyers in a negative way at all.
No.
And the Phil said, "What about Central Coast?" The question is, what's your nearest capital city?
So Queensland's 650,000, and closest to a capital city or regional centre, and then for the rest of Queensland it's 500,000. And this is just based off the average purchase price of a house and land here in like whatever state you're in. So it's definitely the average. Like, for example, I know we said we had 850 for Victoria, but New South Wales, obviously Sydney's more expensive, they have 950.
Yeah. First home buyers, that's the only real change. Let's talk about superannuation, and then we'll talk about small business. And then there's some other cool questions.
Mm-hmm. How good's tea that you didn't make yourself, though?
Sorry?
How good is a cup of tea that you didn't have to make for yourself?
So good.
Like, that is the best type of tea.
So good. And I'm going to end the polling before we talk about super. Yeah, so most people are locked up from Melbourne.
Hey, friends.
53% from Melbourne-ish, nearest capital city, 26 near Sydney, Brisbane 11. So are we saying most of Melbourne are Labor and Green voters? Is that what we're saying?
Look, statistically, yes.
I don't know. It's just the nearest capital city, everyone. Okay, so superannuation.
We're repping the Melbourne people. We're all in ISO. We have nothing better to do than hang out with you, Glen James.
So super, a bit of a nothing thing as well, realistically.
Oh, I thought that there was like some cool changes. Like,
well, one of them, he regurgitated a recommendation from the Royal Commission, basically.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm glad it's been taken into consideration, though, and they're finally listening. That's a good thing.
Yeah. But I guess, so what's your view and what changes to super can you inform us about?
So I like now that we can essentially, I can't remember the term, but like you can tether. Pinning. There you go. You can pin a super fund to your tax number. So your TFN will always have a pinned super fund, and it means that you won't end up having a new super fund just because you have a job, like a new job to go to. And arguably that's how everybody's ended up with so many super accounts. Like, I know when I even went to like roll together mine, I had one with Host Plus, I had one with Rest, I had like all these other ones because I've worked various hospitality and retail jobs and, had to roll them all together. And that's fantastic because we were paying really unnecessary fees on those and you kind of forget about them. So it's nice that, this stops lost super, and this is also going to stop unnecessary fees for funds. And you can do it all through the ATO portal. So you don't need to do anything except for just log into a platform that arguably we all should be using already anyway. I really liked that there was an increased scrutiny of fund obligations and spending. So that was really important because I think that You know, that's obviously important, but I do think that a number of ethical funds out there are going to have a bit of a hard time with that because they are arguably spending a bit more than they should. And then I think it's really important that APRA or APRA, APRA,
APRA.
how do you say APRA? Like I see
Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority or
Okay, sorry. They're going to stop underperforming funds taking on new members, which is kind of cool. So you don't get yourself in hot water if you're changing around. Like that's nice. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Glenn?
I think number one, and the term I read pinned somewhere else, but I think it's stapled.
Okay, sorry.
Whatever.
Yeah, I was going to try tethered, but I was like,
I mean, they all mean the same thing.
About friends. But
look,
that's it.
They're making a new website called Your Super. And you can go in, compare your fund to other funds, which is basically going to be based on the APRA heat map of super funds that you can download now. You can download the spreadsheet, go to APRA or whatever. Now, my biggest beef with this is if they list the My Super fund, so they're only comparing the My Super default funds.
Yeah,
now,
which is frustrating because it might not be your risk profile.
Exactly. So a My Super default fund is basically you rock up, you join the fund, at whatever age you are, it can change the risk profile.
Yeah.
But my biggest beef is the APRA heat map will have the default funds, and it could be a default balanced fund with Fund A that could be 80% growth. Fund B, their default balance fund could be 70% growth. Of course, the fees, of course, the returns are going to be different because it's not bloody apples with apples. And
yeah, but like, are they going to change it so it's apples with apples, or do you really think that they're going to just do the heat map?
Well, they haven't said, and this has been my biggest beef. And when I had Senator Jane Hume on my podcast, I said to her, I think there's a bigger problem here that we need for superannuation investment terms. We need, if you use the word balanced, it's bloody 50-50 or 70-30.
Yeah, like it's not fair.
Everywhere.
It's absolutely not fair. And I've had clients who, like, my clients are intelligent people. Like, they just don't study personal finance, and why would they? Like, if, you know, you're a professional in another area, why would you know the super rules the way that you or I do, Glenn? Like, it just does not make sense. And I've had so many smart people be like, oh, no, I picked that. Like, that's what I wanted after reading it. Like, I understand it. And I'm like, okay, like, let's break it down. Let's understand it together. And they then turn around and be like, that's not what I thought I picked. You're like, yep.
And
that's what I thought you'd say.
Well, here's a case in point. There was a book written by a young man called Scott Pape. He said, Shoeless Investor, I believe it was called. He said,
I've heard
everyone go.
A couple of people have read it.
Put your money in Host Plus index balanced option or whatever it bloody was. People were just rocking up to Host Plus and putting it in the default fund and not the one that he recommended, quote unquote. So
no, because he didn't give enough. Like, someone's correcting us. No, we were taking. Yeah, I was joking. You know what? Don't worry.
I want Scott Pape to come on my podcast to chat. I emailed them. No reply.
I reckon we should have a Scott Pape off and see who can get him on the pod quick.
Oh, you got more people. You got more clout. But I think the point is, it's a very complex world, as you said, for people who aren't in it every day. So if we can get the government to say, if you're a super fund and you're calling your fund a balanced option, it's got to be this % growth. Anyway. But like anything, the Your Super website.
When was that going to launch?
Who would know? It might not even get up. But also, I'm concerned because there has been that many errors in the Money Smart website over the years. Can we trust the government to do it anyway? So
it's not a bad thing. Like, I use the Money Smart compound interest calculator with a lot of my clients and people in my community, just because I think it's a badass calculator. And I really like when I start talking about investment with people that I'm using a government run body to make those predictions. So I'm like, no, this isn't some stoogey financial advisor platform that makes you, sell a dream or whatever. This is government run. But like I've noticed errors on things before and emailed them like, hey, I'm just wondering, is this right?
Oh, I know people who have had stuff corrected from the website. So anyway, the long story short is I don't think there's that much to talk about with the budget.
Yeah. Phoebe says, I think Scott charges a lot for speaking events. A community group I was part of tried Good Luck, Victoria and Glen.
Yeah.
Like, Scotty paid.
SP.
Come on.
Love
yeah,
it.
SP, we're so close.
Let's talk about...
To hang out with you, Glenn.
Sorry?
It'd be good for his brand to hang out with you, Glenn.
No, I wouldn't. He doesn't need me. He's like the biggest bookseller in the world. There's a question here. Yeah, Connor asks, what tax breaks are there for small business / sole traders? So do you want to start on this?
No, I want you to start on this.
Okay, so...
I'm like, hold up, what were they?
So basically, as it stands at the moment, if you're a small business sole trader, there's an instant asset write-off rule. And I think that the amount is 50K that you can instantly write off. So what I mean by that is if you purchased a $50,000 printer for your business, you could put that in your P&L as an expense and effectively, and the P&L means profit and loss statement, so the accounts of the business, and effectively claim that 50 grand on tax. If the asset was worth $51,000, it would not be able to instantly claim on tax. It would sit on the balance sheet, and the next year, because the item's getting older and crapper, it might only be worth $40,000, okay? So that depreciation of the gap of $11,000, that is what you can claim on tax. Now, and I think at the start, Victoria, I said it's not going to be overly relevant because a lot of businesses may have already spent the 50 grand on buying the equipment. But now the government is saying, as a business, buy anything you want, and claim it instantly, apart from the top end of town earning over $5 billion a year or something like that.
To let you, Glenn, you obviously can't make use of this policy.
No, not at all. So
Bugger.
There's probably going to be a lot of tradies driving around in new Land Cruiser utes. But
that seems fair. Everyone wants a Ford Ranger, right? Like they're all going to go get one. I swear, I live in like the inner area of Melbourne, and like there's a lot of construction going on in my suburb at the moment, and I swear it's like Ford Ranger, Ford Ranger, Ford Ranger.
Everywhere,
like,
everywhere.
You're tradie, like you must drive a Ranger.
So yeah, so number one for business, that was a big thing. Again, when we look at jobs, government want big business to make big investment. And these measures increase confidence for business owners. So if you're a local,
they stimulate the economy and all
totally
of the growth and stuff, and it's really good. But it's also like I feel like I really want to sympathise with small business here. It's like, do we even have 50 grand that we can go and spend right now? Like many small businesses have been shut up shop since April. Like it just seems good, but bad.
Second kind of big-ish thing that's probably going to be more useful. So if you make a loss in a financial year, in instances, you can actually claim that against future gains. Okay?
Yeah, which is awesome.
Which is awesome. But now what they're going to do is, if you made a loss this financial year, you can go back a couple of years and kind of redo the tax returns for the business and offset that loss against a past profit.
And that's kind of cool as well.
I think that's a cool, useful thing.
Yeah, and I think that kind of just puts, like at the end of the day, the whole point of this is to put more money in the pockets of small business owners so that we can, keep going and stimulate growth into the future. And I think that that's a great thing.
Totally. I'm just thinking what else for small businesses. From one, I'm just reading.
Losses we spoke about. What else was there? I feel like I've lost it a little bit, but yeah, I'd love to know if you guys have a small business and you're planning on using that 50 grand instant asset write-off.
Or any amount, really.
Yeah, or any. Can you tell me what you're going to buy? Like, I want to know what people are purchasing.
Well, it's funny, Victoria. It's like, setting up all this studio crap. Yeah,
It makes me want to go and do it.
yeah,
as
I
well.
mean, there's basically the business probably bought 60 grand worth of crap, but it didn't mean anything because the most value single item was a $5,000 video switcher, where it's like $1,000 there, $300 there. So for most small businesses, Hannah Bird said you can get a fancy coffee machine for your office.
Girl, you best believe I've already got one.
I'm buying a Mocha Master for the team and guests.
We've recently moved offices, and it was the worst timing, honestly. We moved offices in June, so I had a total of 2 weeks with my team being able to go into the office, and we haven't been allowed to since. But the facilities that we have are now kind of like, it's not co-working space, but we have like our own office and our own like facilities. But in the space, there's like a cafe with our own barista that's included in the lease.
Wow.
So my team can go get coffee whenever they want. And Jade Fort will love to know that he stocks my favorite oat milk. Like, it's the best thing in the entire world.
Love it. Love it. I've never tried it.
You need to come on over. I'm pretty sure our podcast is moving into being She's on the Oat Milk instead of She's on the Money, because I'm so obsessed with it.
Nina said she owns a dance school in Sydney and they need to get a new air conditioner for the whole building and probably recarpet.
Perfection.
So, I mean, I know some air conditioner units could be 100 grand. So
yeah, I was going to say it depends how big your dance school is and the type of air conditioning unit you've done. But
so let's talk about
splitting it up as well. Like,
sorry,
I was going to say it could be worth splitting up something as well. Like, if you've got a big reno planned, like, having a chat and seeing what you can do for under 50 grand to make sure that you can make use of it might be a good idea.
Totally. Now let's chat about apprentices, and there was a question there. Someone said, Mish said, the budget seems to be excluding people over 35. Your thoughts? Well, if you're over 35 and you're a taxpayer, you're included regardless. So I'd probably say that's probably a myth as a blanket rule. But the government do want more people that are younger in work, because let's remember, under 30s, under 25s were the most hit by COVID, because there might be casual workers in hospitality, blah, blah, blah. And what the government are doing are passing on $200 per week for those aged 16 to 29 to employers, and $100 per week for those aged 30 to 35 who are on job seeker that get employed for a minimum of 20 hours a week.
It was any type of government benefit.
Basically, yeah.
So, like, if you were on like parental payments,
or youth allowance, or
or youth allowance or something, you're eligible as well.
Katie says, does the 50K apply to sole traders? I believe so. Chat with your accountant.
Yeah, all of this is like, it's a good chat because we understand it, but at the end of the day, it's definitely not personal advice. And if you're going to go and do something, literally just talk to your accountant, because they're going to know your business inside out, and they'll be like, hey, cool, like, you actually can't afford to do that, even though a 50 grand tax card would be great. So
I sometimes say, I'm right, but speak to your accountant.
I mean, that's true too. I'm not as brazen as you are.
Yeah, so I've already been
Christy wants a milk preference poll, and I do.
Okay, I'll do that as well. Christy, can you write down all the milk preferences that you want in the poll, just so we can get that up? And then the government basically want to throw money to get 100,000 apprentices back to work. So again, these are kind of more the business things of helping employers pay employees. But I mean, realistically, if you've got an employee that you want to hire for 20 hours a week, a couple $100 for an under 29-year-old, probably not going to move the business needle too much, because you're still going to have to cash flow.
And they still have to work a minimum of 20 hours as well. So it's not like you can take on some casual for 1 day a week and pay them $200. Like, that's not.
And the government are basically going to subsidize 50% of an apprentice or trainee's wage, worth up to $7,000 a quarter. Yeah.
And
So
that's actually pretty good as well.
I've done an apprenticeship. I'm a licensed tradie. I did telecommunications. I'm just all for apprenticeships. I think we need trades. We need all genders in all trades where possible. So I'm a big advocate for apprenticeships. Social security, if you're on any type of government benefit and don't earn an income, there's another $500 coming to you in December and then in March. I think you mentioned that earlier, Victoria. Yeah, Joanne said in a pre-submitted question, Victoria, would love to be able to hire a labourer for our mechanical business and utilise the $200 a week, but don't understand news. So you'd have to hire someone, Joanne, who is already on a government benefit. So job seeker, youth allowance, or parental payment for at least 1 month out of the 3 months prior to when you hired them. You'd have to hire them for at least 20 hours a week to get the $200 a week, and they would have to be under age 29.
Now, I've got a question, and this might be a really dumb question, given I'm one of the hosts of this. But does that then go down the route of discrimination? Like, what if there's a perfect candidate for that role that you're hiring for and they haven't been on job seeker or job keeper or anything like that? They haven't had any government assistance. Like, can we as employers actually advertise for only that person? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think it's a bit BS. I mean, if you're going to give out money, just make it like they haven't been in work for the last 3 months, not on a bloody government benefit.
Because there's also so many people in my community as well, especially like people from overseas, people who, you know, have immigrated here. I've got people who have lost their job but were too young or lived at home that didn't actually qualify for any government support. And yet now they're being ostracized and not able to apply for these jobs that do have support, that arguably if you're an employer you would prefer to hire someone that does come with financial support. It just seems not fair.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work in practice, to be honest. I think you raise a valid point. Cow's milk, soy milk, almond milk, oat milk, skim milk, lactose-free milk, any other milks?
Light skim omega-3.
All right. Goat's milk. I've never bloody heard of that.
Where do you find goat's milk? There's almond milk, soy milk, macadamia milk.
So, and remember, we're just hanging out tonight. Sorry?
Have you made our poll? Chop,
yeah,
chop.
I'm launching it now.
Rice.
Oh, I didn't. I actually, I've got to add coconut. I've got to add coconut.
Important.
Coconut milk. Imagine being a bloody barista, all these different options you got now.
Oh my God, there's so many options. I feel awful when I go to a cafe that I haven't been before and I'm like, oh my gosh, do you have oat? Human
So a couple of years ago.
Yeah, there's a heap of babies on here and they're just like RSVP.
A couple of years ago, I was at and this is for your coffee choice, everyone. I was at my friend Glee Coffee Roasters roaster. A friend, she just had a baby. She's a barista. Hi, Kim, if you're not listening, but whatever. She had breast milk. And we're like, I wonder what it steams like.
No.
So they steamed up the breast milk and we tasted it. It's a bit sweet. What can I say?
So you've just been drinking human breast milk.
I had a sip. It was
the weird one in this webinar.
No. All right. So I'm going to end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2.
So I can't see the results. Only Glenn can see results.
I'm going to share the results now.
I was going to say if it's, oh no, it's not.
No, the traditional cow's milk has won it at 33%. Then soy at 15, soy at 14, almond at 14, oat at 10.
I'm on over to the She's on the Money podcast.
Skim on 11, lactose free on 6%, and my fellow black coffee drinkers on 8%.
I'm sorry, but on 3% we've got human breast milk.
Oh, that's funny. All right, back to the budgety stufferoonie. This is an interesting one. That first page can be thrown out.
Because you printed it.
I did. I'm old, remember?
Look at, that was the biggest waste of paper.
It's in recycling. Back off.
Where's your recycling? Where do you actually go, Glen James?
What's that? Re asks.
Oh, you're just ignoring me. All right. Next.
No, there was a glitch with your internet or something.
Will the budget have on the... Oh, okay, sorry. What effects will the budget have on the ASX?
Okay. Do you want to answer what effects it will have on the stock market?
Well, it depends. Infrastructure is arguably going to increase. The ASX was up today. Hold on, let me look at your notes. Cheers. 1.25% today.
You see how I prep Victoria?
Yeah, he literally prepped, and I read about it earlier and thought I could remember it. I think that, I think it'll impact it positively because we've got so much, now there's clarity on what's going on. People are going to be investing more in infrastructure and knowing that there's more roads, like things like Transurban are probably going to go up. It's not a bad thing. I like the certainty that exists around when the budget comes up, but I don't think it will, negatively impact it. The pandemic, though, is a completely different story in terms of like what's impacting the ASX at the moment.
Yeah, and we have had a bit of a recovery anyway.
Yeah.
I did an Express podcast that's, I think, going out on Friday about will the ASX drop to 5,000 points if, Trump gets in or if Biden gets in. I think it's important to note that if we are investing for the long term of over 6 or 7 years, does it actually matter what happens in a couple of weeks' time, a couple of months' time? The answer is no, because we're investing and we're not selling down. So you need to be an investor and not a trader to try and game the market. So do you want to... Yeah, Lara asks the question, how does giving everyone a tax break actually encourage spending when savvy people will save it or put it towards goals?
What was that?
Lara asks, it's on the second page.
Yeah, I know, I just didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. How does everyone
a tax break actually encourage spending when savvy people will save it or put it towards goals? Because most of the population, my friend, are not savvy like you are. They'll go out, and we saw it. Was it John Howard that gave us money and we all bought TVs?
No, that was Kevio 7.
Oh, Kevo 7, yeah.
Yep.
We all went and bought TVs. Like, it does stimulate the economy because we have more free cash flow, and a lot of us are going to go out and purchase things that have been kind of on our wish list or on our list of things that we need to get done. Even if it is going into your savings, though, that's stimulating the economy because, you are arguably financially better off. And if you've got some savings, you're more freely going to be spending the other money that you do have. So for me, I think it does stimulate the economy. And arguably everyone should be saving it so that not next time, but hopefully this doesn't happen again. But when something happens, we are, financially stable and not in a position where we do really rely on the government benefits to come in and bail us out, which arguably a lot of us aren't in a position where that's going to impact us. But yeah, if I were you, put it towards an emergency fund.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like when we talk about public policy, it all comes back to, the M3 community, the She's on the Money community. I'm going to share a poll of where you came in from.
When everyone's dropping off because they're like, guys, it's 9 o'clock, I'm out.
Yeah, that's right. Where public policy, it's a big chisel and there's winners and losers. When there was $1,000 checks going out, people who were dead were getting checks. People who didn't need the money were getting checks. Public policy is a big thing. So you can't actually, we can't use kind of the people listening to this podcast as a big measure because we're all dialed into our money.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and you recently saw this with your, you do a census each year.
Yeah.
And ours is going out soonish when I can get my stuff together to post it. But I found it really interesting because so little of your community in comparison to the general population were in consumer debt. And I thought that was fantastic, but it's also a really good reflection of the fact that, you know, people who are interested in our content and really want to engage into our communities probably don't have their heads in the sand about money. Like, they probably do want to do better. And if they're not, you know, currently in a position where they are consumer debt free, they want to be desperately, and they want to change that, and that's why they're here. And I think that, you know, these are our people, Glenn. Like, we want to celebrate them, and I'm grateful that we're surrounded by them. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting seeing those stats, knowing that our communities are better off.
Yeah, and I'll probably say 70% of our listeners and community are consumer debt free.
So cool.
And
like so
so
cool.
Oh, it's amazing. And it'd probably be very similar to yours.
Yeah, I can't wait to do our, we don't call it a census. I've just been doing a survey to pretty much just work out what my community want from me and how I can bring them the best content and what they want. So.
Now, there's a bit of chatter about, someone said breast milk is normal. I just want to be clear. Yes, breast milk
I would not like
normal.
to give you the opportunity to be clear. Glenn drinks breast milk.
No,
Take that.
I've had one sip. Breast milk is normal in life, but it's generally not normal at your local cafe to put in your latte.
Are you sure?
Not sure.
There is a documentary on Netflix at the moment about a guy who is, and can someone post the name of it, because I can't find it in my brain right now.
Oh, the breast milk dilemma.
No, it's a guy
the sequel to The Social Dilemma.
But it's a guy who drinks breast milk as a part of his bodybuilding.
Oh.
It's disgusting.
Wow. Now, the survey results are in. Where did you come in from? 28% of people from She's on the Money, 17% of people from My Millennial Money. 55 of you listen to both podcasts, are part of both groups. So welcome.
And one found their way to our webinar, not knowing either of us.
Bless the 1%. Love you.
Welcome to our communities. Choose wisely, friends.
Yeah, that's right. So
Sarah says it was Unwell episode 3.
Yeah. So just on that, if you do listen to both our podcasts, She's on the Money and My Millennial Money, and you're on Apple, we would both like a nice review, because we put a lot of hard work in, and the teams behind the scene, they really get encouraged when people leave nice reviews. So if you could do one thing tonight as a bit of a thank you payment, if you're on Apple, that would be amazing.
That would be really kind, guys, because I think that lots of, like, not that either of us that I've noticed have had lots of hate or anything like that recently, but I just think it's one of those things that, you know, if you're enjoying something, you don't usually go and review it. And so most of our community probably haven't gone in and rated it, but it actually really impacts the way that we show up, and our podcast shows up to other people, especially when we're posting new content all the time. So that would be really generous of you if you could do that.
Now, you can't review on Spotify, but you can screenshot podcasts and share it on Instagram. Wink. And they're on Google as well. So I'm just thinking, in terms of budgeting, let's just go back to, we've got 15 minutes.
Like personal budgeting?
We can do that. Let's just scroll through the top 3 questions. Okay. Christy said,
questions. Yeah.
With all the borrowing for the budget, how worse off are we going to be than previous generations, i.e. aged pension?
I don't think we're going to be worse off.
I mean, there's $1 trillion of kind of debt that's going to be invested, and the rationale that the government have is we make more jobs, we get more people working, more people paying tax, we grow the pie. That's the basic rationale of the Liberal government, I guess, or conservative governments. So small government, more people working, less taxes, more money sloshing around. So their assumptions are with the budget that, you know, the recession ends in 10 minutes, the travel is back mid next year, and what else? And that there's a vaccine.
Yeah, but I also think it's worth mentioning here as well that you know, I'm assuming that you guys are in a similar generation to me. And, you know, even if you are a bit older, when it comes to stuff like aged pension, we really need to remember that it wasn't until the early 90s that superannuation became compulsory. So prior to that, so many people didn't have retirement savings because they weren't compulsory with their jobs. Lots of women weren't in the workforce earning a salary. So most people who are currently retired, there's a massive discrepancy between, you know, their retirement savings being male and female like generated. And I think that that is going to start changing. And as much as we, you know, might not have the most benefits, arguably we will be one of the best off, you know, retired generations, purely because we've been able to, you know, self-fund it in a way, in a compulsory way. And I think that that's really lucky and something that we always forget, because also when we're talking about superannuation, we often, you know, forget that it wasn't compulsory until then. And that's really important to remember when we, you know, report on how many women have super and what the averages are on super, because they often don't actually apply to our generations. Because for a lot, like if I take my parents, like it wasn't compulsory for my mum. Like I was born in 1991. Like before I was born, my mum probably didn't have any super at all. So I think that that's really important to talk about as well.
I think it's important, Victoria, on that question. Our generation, we have no excuse because we do have super. So the person responsible for your future, everyone go now, look in the bathroom, look in your bedroom. There's a big mirror there. Go and stand in front of it. That person is responsible for your future. Yes, if you are diagnosed with a disability or something horrendous happens, of course we want a safety net. Of course we have our own personal insurances and all that stuff. I'm not saying that the government shouldn't have safety net for the citizens that form our community and the disadvantaged, but I am saying en masse, we are responsible for our future and we have no excuse to not build money for the future.
100%. And like, it sounds really flippant. And if you've listened to my podcast, you've heard this example before. But if you start at the age of 21 and you're investing $500 a month, by the time you retire, you'll have an investment portfolio of about $1.2 million, which if we look at that is probably going to generate, you know, between $40,000 and $60,000 worth of passive revenue for you. That is already more than our age pension. Like, totally. And that's easy. And as we, you know, grow and, you know, get higher paying jobs, like that can be more. And if, you know, you're not in that position yet, that's definitely something that you can use, even just a compound interest calculator on the MyGov website. Like have a look at that and work out what you want to retire with and what that actual like cost of lifestyle is going to look like, and then work backwards. And I think that's a really good way of working out how much you want in your super so that you don't have to rely on the aged pension. Because if we start early and we start young, we can actually achieve this in a really reasonable way, as opposed to waiting until we're in our 50s and going, oh my gosh, I have no super, what's going on?
Very good point. And Christina agrees that you've made a really good point.
I'll stop making points. Glenn, yes. Would you like to make one?
I'd like to make a point that there's a person watching, and I'll keep this person's name anonymous. Oh, I just replied to the Instagram post that they sent me, and I'm intimidated because this person works at Treasury and he or she is my go-to with hard technical stuff. And when the coronavirus first hit with all the stuff, I was on the phone to this person on a Sunday afternoon getting the lowdown of, because they're a lot smarter than me. So I feel intimidated that we've got a Treasury worker who's nerding out on us. But anyway,
hold on, did we do all of our disclaimers? Like, did we do everything that we need to do to cover our butts?
No, but when I put it on YouTube, it'll be in the fine print. So there you go. Now, yes, and this is all general advice. So there's a question from Loretta. Is there any change to the help debt thresholds? I didn't see them, so no. Anonymous said, do you feel like the rich are getting richer with this budget? The tax cuts? Yeah, it's all relative. And a lot of people won't like me saying that. Because generally, if you earn more, you spend more, generally. Sure, there are people who, and this is the weird thing. I know people who earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and don't have a cent to their name. But I've seen people on Instagram who are 25 years old, who are hustling and really got a target, who've got more money in an investment portfolio. So
it's insane. I just think
I don't know.
Yeah, it's about what you do with your money, not, you know, how many tax cuts you get. Like, and at the end of the day, far out, Glenn. At the end of the day, I think it's really.
Oh,
important.
you far outing my wink?
Yes, I was.
I winked because that person on Instagram replied to me, and I was winking at them to say I got it. I wasn't winking at tax cuts. I don't think anyone.
How am
saw
I
it.
meant to know that?
I know, and I don't think anyone saw it because the screen's probably on you at the time.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't think, like, maybe that's a controversial opinion, but I don't think it makes the rich richer. Like,
yeah,
your tax cut is bigger because your income is bigger. Like, it kind of is what it is. And if they're getting more back, arguably they're spending more and putting more into the economy as well. Like, it doesn't, yeah. I mean, if it was hundreds of thousands of dollars or something, but it's literally like, I'm pretty sure it was double from what I saw.
And I guess the cool thing is, you don't have to agree with any of us. We just want to provoke thought. This is just what I think of the world, and I'm wrong most of the time.
Oh yeah, great. I'm glad you run a podcasting community.
No, I just position myself as I'm not your guru. I'm just facilitating a chat. So there's a heap of questions. We might end it there on the budget. Long story, heaps of money on infrastructure. Childcare missed out. You'll get some tax cuts. Environment got screwed. Women got messed around with. Like, they just did not. Yeah, 240 million towards the gender pay gap thing. It was a bit of tokenism. That's kind of the long and the short of it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
So if you've got any general money questions for the last 10 minutes, feel free to just pop them in the chat. We'll just kind of scroll through there because the Q&A section's really big.
I thought it was interesting. Someone has anonymously said, from a Melbourne perspective, do you think it would be better to buy a property this year or perhaps next year? And I think that's so based on your personal circumstances. Like, I wouldn't be buying property just purely because the market is going down. Like, if it aligns to your values and it aligns to, you know, your personal goals and your financial goals, I think then, yeah, fantastic. It could be a really good time to make use of a down market. But like, the point is to, you know, purchase something that you're going to buy and hold, not, you know, make money really quick, especially on property. So I think that, you know, we also really need to remember that a mortgage is for a very long period of time. Unlike, you know, getting a share portfolio where you can just invest, and if you really need to stop your investment on a monthly basis, you can do that, and there's no ramifications except for the fact that you're not investing. A mortgage is something that you are tied to, usually for 30 years, and that repayment is not negotiable usually. Like, you need to be in a situation where you can fund that each and every single month. So if you're in that position and, you know, you were planning on purchasing property, I think then, yeah, absolutely look and see if you can get a good deal. But if not, probably not.
Yeah, and on that house thing, I just think if the shoe fits, if you're looking for a house, you find the right one, it fits in your budget, it's a longer term thing, you got to live somewhere, go and enjoy life.
Yeah, and like, it's very common knowledge in my community that I am currently looking to purchase a home with my partner. And, you know, we've spoken about it. Should we be purchasing now? Should we be waiting 6 months? And it's kind of like, well, no, even if we saved $30,000 or $40,000 on a property, like, we are planning on owning this asset for a minimum of 10 years. So that isn't going to be, you know, something that's really worth holding out on. I think we're just looking for the right asset for us and our lifestyles and what we're looking to purchase. And if that means it benefits us, then bonus. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to be worried if, you know, I purchase something and it's 50 grand more than what it was going to be in 6 months, and then I see similar properties for less later. Like, I'm just going to be happy with the fact that I'm in the market and I purchase something that I love. So if you're hung up on price around property, I think that's probably not a good sign.
There's a question here, and it's a fun question, and we'll do it really quick because there's some other serious ones. Christina said, what's been your worst ISO purchase? Did you have like a brain explosion in ISO?
Oh, do I be honest here?
Sure, I'm about to be honest with my bloody worst purchase.
I have bought a lot of cosmetics and I'm not wearing makeup very often. I keep going on Adore Beauty and buying cosmetics and skincare I don't need nor use. Like I have so many unopened cosmetic things that I'm just like, oh, glad I brought some lashes. When am I going to wear those? So probably that, and an excessive amount of Uber Eats.
I'll get you.
What's been yours? I don't know. You haven't been in ISO in the same way we have. But
No, but I set up this new studio in ISO, and
I would argue that's a good deal because you're not paying rent anymore.
That's right. But so at the start of when the shutdown happened, I ordered some new lights for the studio.
Oh, that's right.
And this one, guys, talk about rushing and not reading stuff online.
Purchase, I expected more of you, Glen James.
Yes, I bought 6 LED lights for $2,000. So they're studio lights. You know, we hang them up, 6 of them. They were back order from China and all this stuff. Anyway, it arrived, took 3 months to get the lights in. The courier rocked up with the box. And I said, oh, should there be more boxes? There should be 5 more boxes. And he goes, nah, this was all. Sometimes they can't. Anyway, I had a look. It wasn't 6 times LED lights. It was 6 times daylight. So it was one light for $2,000. And it was just like, oh my goodness. Because on the website, just above it, it had a pack of 2. And then I saw the one of 6 times. I'm like, oh, that's so good deal. So that was my biggest whoops moment for
Yeah, that's not great. Oh, I bought a kitten. Is that nice. A good ISO purchase?
Oh, and thanks everyone if you're dropping out now and you've got to go. Thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you got your money's worth and less and more.
Yeah, like this was totally good value.
But yeah, kitten, that was a big ISO purchase.
Yeah, it was. Cats are expensive, guys. I did not realize. My first cat was a rescue that I got off Gumtree. So he didn't cost a lot. But turns out costs about $1,000 for a good kitten. That's a lot. And then the vet bills come in. He needs his vaccinations. He needs his second vaccinations. He needed to be desexed. I needed to buy kitten food. So I think it's very important, to take all of that into consideration.
Oh, here's a question. To be honest, there's a question here about something to do with tax and surcharges on private.
Someone bought a Pikachu rock carving. I'm so here for that.
My brain's fried. I'm not answering any more questions. Thanks.
No. What's your question? Sorry.
Well, there was a question here about tax, about health funds, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm fried. But there's a good question. There's 2 good ones here. Christy says, I don't listen to She's on the Money. Tell me why I should tune in. She listens to
I don't know if you should, my friend. Why should we tune in? Because I'm a very nice person. I really like oat milk. No, actually, I just think that we talk about money in a really non-confrontational way. Glenn's a bit looser in terms of his delivery, but I guess really similar topics. But at the same time, you know, my co-host Georgia and I, we are quite like, this is our main chat. We share money diaries from people. So like our listeners, we call them up and get their money stories from them and understand, you know, their journey with money. I think that's really cool. We have a hotline where our listeners call in and leave us voicemails and we answer them on the show. And I just think it's really, really fun. Like money diaries are my favorite part. But yeah, I don't know why you should listen to us. 80,000 people listen to us every week. So we can't be that bad, right?
It's amazing. Yeah, listen to it. There's a question here. What podcast topics are coming up? I'm going to open my spreadsheet and tell everyone.
Oh, me too. Let's share. What do you got? I've got a Christmas set coming up.
Yeah, I'm interviewing.
Us on the music again.
So for my Christmas ep, which we're putting out in the next little while before Christmas, I'm interviewing, get this, a lady who has 10 kids, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. Yes, and we're going to do a I'm going to their house, sit around the kitchen table, and we're going to do a bit of a Christmas hacks, money hacks to feed a family of 10 people.
I love that. What else have you got on your list?
Let me see. So this Tuesday coming, we've got how to get more money from your home. We speak with a property valuer. We've got the next week, we've got a good mutual friend of ours, James Millard. He's doing a live session with a couple, Blake and Jazz, who listen to My Millennial Money.
Oh, cool.
Then I've got a podcast called Addicted to Porn, PEWN. So I talk with a porn broker and we unpack the porn industry and how all that works.
Yeah, cool.
We are then doing 2 weeks of how to work smarter, not harder, part 1 and part 2. We've got first home buyers after you buy. So we've done one a couple of weeks ago, first home buyers before you buy. Now we're doing first home buyers after you buy. We've got Christmas hats. We've got an estate planning one coming up. We've got one, the cost of IVF and starting a family. So we've got...
we've got one of those too.
Ooh, wow.
Oh,
well, ours is scheduled to go up on the 8th of December, so you might beat us.
No, we won't. Damn it.
And so we've got a guy coming in talking about his family's journeys and a gal coming in talking about her family's journeys.
So cute.
And we've got a Christmas farewell, and I've got a bit of space in there. But lots coming up. And that's only the Tuesday show. The Thursday show, there's a whole other list. So.
Oh, God. I only have one show at the moment, but we're about, am I allowed to, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm going to. We're about to start 2 episodes a week, which is so fun. Bring it. And in the new year, Glenn, you don't even know this, we've got 2 new podcasts hitting Spotify and Apple. So that's pretty fun.
One's the property one, isn't it?
Pardon?
One's the property one.
And a business one. And I saw you just did your business one. And I was like, God damn it, Glenn, stop this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they're not the same co-hosts. I have 2 brand new co-hosts for my brand new pods, which I am honestly super excited about. And both of them come with online courses.
Wow.
Honestly, I'm so excited about, and just think that, like, I run a small, like, it's not small, but like I run a small business and have a small team, and I'm so, like, just like you, Glenn, so passionate about small business that I kind of just want a podcast and an online course that really helps that. And then, no, it's not going to be called She's in the Property. But you can probably guess it'll be along the same lines. And someone said before, actually, on podcasts, we should do a collab episode. Nikita, we already have done a few. If you go back in Glenn's like history, I know you guys do heaps of pods, you'll be able to see like the collab episodes that Glenn and I have done together, which is very cool.
Arden said, Victoria presents topics in such a non-intimidating way that educates you and also makes you feel proud of your achievements and not alone when you go through struggles. I do the complete opposite.
We're just different people, Glenn.
I'm also, so the business one, that's cool. Someone asks who's going to be on that. I'm just chatting heaps of different business owners, getting stories of how people overcome stuff. And then we kind of pseudo announced today, there's a podcast starting called My Millennial Health and Wellness.
Oh, cool. I will love that.
Yeah, so that's probably going to happen, and I'm not on that. So that will probably happen. We're aiming to launch 1st of January.
Yeah, we're doing that as well. So you guys are going to have so much new content in your ears. How exciting.
So good. So
I'm very excited about it.
Lots happening. It's so good.
I feel like there's so much happening. And like, as much as ISO has really sucked, it's meant that I've been at home able to pull this content together. Someone just said, do I ever sleep? No, not really, if I'm honest. But being an ISO, I know it sounds really stereotypical, but like there's not much else to do at home except work. And I am in a really lucky position where I adore what I do. Like, I adore my community. I adore the content that we create. Like, talking about this stuff just makes me so excited. And once I have a new idea on something, I just really want to bring it to life. So it's not, you know, oh my gosh, all she does is work. It's like, no, like I just really get so excited about bringing this stuff to you guys. And once I had an idea, and like the property one, it's like, well, why don't we share everything to do with property from before you can even afford one? Like, what do you do? Like, how do we set goals? How do we plan goals? And then all the way through to, how do I speak to an agent? What should I be doing in terms of, you know, negotiation? How does this work? And like, you know, aligning an online course with that, with all the downloadable PDFs. Like, this is what I would want. And I'm going through this home purchasing thing at the moment. And I thought, because I was a financial advisor, like, let's be honest, I had a fair few tickets on myself being like, oh, it'll be fine. No, I don't understand it. So that'll be really good.
So there you have it, everyone. I'm excited for everything you're bringing to your people.
Yeah. And you too. We're doing cool stuff.
I mean, it's a lot going on, but I've got a really good team that's helping.
You've got such a big team. I'm so envious.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know, I really want to create what we're doing bigger than just me, because, you know, I can't talk about health and wellness because I'm crap at it. I can't talk about property because I'm crap at it.
No, and for the record, I'm not the property expert, nor am I going to be the business expert on these podcasts, which is super exciting.
Love it. Well, we should take off. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's been a fun night. We probably should do the odd webinar more. Thanks to everyone for writing your messages. We would both really appreciate a cheeky little Apple review or an Instagram share. Tell everybody that, you know, we're here to help. And that's all, friends.
See you next time.
Thanks, Victoria. Later, everyone.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.